What's going on everyone, you're back with your boy Jono for another quick math lesson. Today we're going to find the highest common factors between two numbers. This is a skill you're 100% going to have to use again and again in maths all throughout high school. So getting on top of it now is essential to just smashing maths later. So what's going to happen is you're going to be given 2 or 3 numbers and you'll be asked to find the highest common factor between those two whole numbers. Because we've already done some of our factor lists, I guarantee you will find this pretty easy, but there's just an extra step involved that we're going to learn today. Like I said, this is a skill that's going to come up again and again, so being on top of it early will 100% make the rest of your maths life much easier. We're going to be using it for divisions, ratios, fractions, algebra, and factorizing. Some of these things you wouldn't have even heard of yet, but I guarantee being on top of your highest common factors this early will make the rest of that maths much more simple. So a normal question would be, hey, Jono, what is the highest common factor? And all the information is there in the name. So highest, we are looking for the biggest number possible, the biggest number that applies to this situation. Common means that it's in both, or it's a factor for both of the numbers in question. Finally, a factor means that it has to be a factor. So the highest common factor, what we're really looking for is the biggest number that is a factor for both of the numbers given. So if you're on top of that, you're like 80% of the way to getting these correct. So a very typical question would be this. Hey, find the highest common factor, or the HCF, between 24 and 32. So the way that I like to do it is I like to write out all the factor pairs possible, but you could make a factor list that's in ascending order. So for this first one, I've got 1 times 24, 2 times 12, 3 times 8, and 4 times 6. They are my factor pairs for 24. Then when I've got 32, I've got 1 times 32, 2 times 16, 4 times 8, and that's actually all of them. So now to find the highest common factor, all I've got to do is find the biggest number that's in both lists. That's 8 on both of them. So my answer is highest common factor is equal to 8, and we're done. One of my big pro tips for this is please always circle the number. Heaps of my students lose marks because they make a perfect factor list. They find them all absolutely killing it, but then they forget to answer the question. The HCF is 8. So just by circling it, it will guarantee that you do actually finish off the question. The highest common factor is the number in the circle. Because math teachers are really lazy, you might actually see the question written like this: HCF bracket 12, 8. This is really just saying, hey, what's the highest common factor between 12 and 8, but in just way less words. So we're just going to do the same thing, make the factor pairs for both of these numbers. So for 12, I've got 1 times 12, 2 times 6, and 3 times 4. And for 8, I've got 1 times 8 and 2 times 4. This means that the highest common factor in both of these lists is equal to 4. So my highest common factor is 4. Happy days. Finally, we might be asked to find the highest common factor between two numbers that don't actually have a very high factor. So if I've got 9 and 14, I've got 1 times 9 and 3 times 3, or I've got 1 times 14 and 2 times 7. As I can see here, the highest common factor is 1, which is not a very high number. So you could write that the highest common factor is equal to 1, that's totally fine. But what you're more likely to hear is that, hey, these two numbers don't have a common factor. We actually ignore 1 most of the time because every single number ever multiplied by 1 is that number. So 1 is a common factor with everything. So these two numbers, 9 and 14, do not have a common factor. And that's all you have to write. It's totally fine to get that as an answer. So like I said at the start of the lesson, this is a topic that's going to come up again and again and again. So you have to make sure that you are a master of your times tables. That's the fundamental skill for this. And then you'll be able to use that again and again as you move through high school. So making sure you're fully on top of your times tables is the #1 skill before we really rip into this. And once you do that, all we've got to do is write down the numbers to get these factors. Thanks so much for watching this lesson, and I'll see you later.